What's up guys, my name is Ace, and yesterday we got yet another behind the scenes video for Modern Warfare 4, this time talking about the weapons, and with this we saw quite a few new gameplay clips, and there's several screen grabs to be talking about here, and I really wanted to have this video up yesterday, but I already had 2 videos planned and scheduled for yesterday, so that's why I'm a little bit late on this one. And also, there's a good chance we're going to be seeing some actual live gameplay as early as today, maybe even by the time this video goes out, we've already got some actual gameplay from the Fanatics event that's going on right now. Apparently people will be able to stream the game at the event. So I suspect we'll be getting a whole lot more information as the weekend goes on, but let's talk about the things that I did pull out from this, at least the things that we didn't already know about. Keeping in mind, like I've already covered the full weapons list that we're aware of at this point, and I didn't see any brand new weapons with this that we haven't already seen or that haven't already leaked in the past. So let's talk about one of the big new things that's coming with Modern Warfare 4, and this is the rework to Hipfire. Now, we've talked about this in the past, but in this video, we actually got some gameplay examples of this. Essentially, what they've done with Hipfire is they've removed the typical random spread that we've always had in Call of Duty, where you've got that Hipfire crosshair, and when you pull the trigger, if you don't aim down sights, your bullet is going to go somewhere randomly within those Hipfire crosshairs. That's not happening in Modern Warfare 4. Your shots, when hipfiring, will go where your gun is pointed. And initially hearing about this, I was really skeptical about it, but now that we've seen a few clips here, let's just have a look at it. And as we can see, there still tends to be a fair amount of sway with your gun, and as your gun sways, that will also be swaying your point of aim in hipfire. But then on top of that, you can see if you fire in full auto while hipfiring, your gun is going to be bouncing around a fair amount. And if we're just looking at the points of impact here with this LMG, I've plotted them out at least very roughly here. As you can see, there's still a fair amount of randomness mixed in there. It's not going to be pinpoint accurate, especially when firing full auto. Yes, I will say this is definitely still much more accurate than the hipfire you would tend to experience with an LMG in current Call of Duty games. But I suspect movement is going to have a much bigger impact here as well, because your gun is likely to be moving a lot more, because with this test, the player was just standing completely still as far as I could tell. And this has actually alleviated a lot of my concerns with this. When I first heard about this hipfire mechanic changing in Modern Warfare 4, I was very skeptical because I was worried that hipfiring would just be the new thing that you do more often than not and you only aim down sight sometimes. And I just feel that would be far too big of a change to the overall core gameplay loop. But after seeing this, it looks like I'm probably still going to want to aim down sights more often than not with the guns. Outside of certain setups, I probably won't be running around just primarily hipfiring things. Although it does look like if you pair this with a laser, it's really nice because it shows you exactly what your point of aim is. And we can see in this other example, your point of aim does bounce around a fair amount with movement and while firing. But at least here you can see where your bullet is going to go compared to the current state of hipfire where it's completely randomized within that given spread that you've got. So it does look like you will have some added utility with hipfire. Hipfiring is likely to be more effective in this game than previous games. But it also doesn't look like it's just going to be the go-to thing for all of your gunfights, and you're absolutely still going to want to get aimed down sight more often than not. Now, after that, another thing they outlined in this video is something they've done to mask the muzzle smoke in order to make it so your target isn't going to be as obstructed while firing at them. And this was one of the huge complaints in the community for Modern Warfare 2, was when firing your guns, there was just so much muzzle smoke, as well as gun shake and screen shake, and it just made it very distracting and hard to track targets while also firing at them. So what they've done here with Modern Warfare 4 is they've made it so there's still a fair amount of smoke. There's actually quite a bit of muzzle smoke still on your screen. However, they've masked out the center of your screen, and this is an exaggeration they're showing here. They do blend it a lot better in reality, so it's not like a hard circle that you're seeing, but that's just to sort of illustrate what they've done here. They've made it so the center of your screen is not really going to have any muzzle smoke, but surrounding that, you're still going to be seeing plenty. So it should make it a lot easier to see and track your targets while firing. And based on what I'm seeing here, while this is definitely a welcome improvement, I think it's a pretty cool solution to this. At the end of the day, I still feel like there's too much of like a strobing effect with how much muzzle smoke you see on your screen in general. So even with this improvement, I find that's still going to be an unnecessary distraction. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about that Infinity Ward actually tweeted about here is the gun shake. This is still quite high, kind of like we were seeing in Modern Warfare 2. And I think the biggest thing that gets to me is how much your gun is rotating and how it feels like your character is not pulling that stock into their shoulder like you would when firing a real gun. And as a result, a lot of what I've noticed with the gameplay of Modern Warfare 2, and I'm seeing it in some of these clips here as well, is it seems like your gun is pivoting or rotating around your rear grip, like where your hand is. And that seems to imply that the stock is just kind of floating in the air rather than being properly seated into your shoulder. Whereas in reality, when using a gun with a stock and you know what you're doing, that pivot point should be your shoulder. So you shouldn't be seeing that sort of rotation in your hand that makes everything feel kind of sloppy and loose. Now, as I said, Infinity Ward did actually tweet about this. They said they've seen the early conversations around visual recoil, and the beta will give players a chance to get hands-on, and they'll be monitoring feedback closely throughout both weekends. So perhaps there's still room for adjustments here, if adjustments are actually needed. I mean, I'm talking about all of this stuff just based on clips that we're seeing. I haven't gotten my hands on the game yet to actually feel this, but based on what I'm seeing here, I think there is still some room for improvement in these areas. Now, as for the next thing they outlined here, this is how they've made adjustments to depth of field. And essentially, they were trying to make things as realistic as possible. And as a result, they made some adjustments here. You can see what it looked like before and after if you had the depth of field setting turned on. At the end of the day, I still think depth of field off looks significantly better. I'm not a big fan of games simulating this stuff on screen. I think it's just one of those cases where sometimes it's better to let video games be video games rather than trying to simulate and translate how an eye works to a camera and a screen. And so, assuming they still have an option to turn this off, which I suspect they will have the option to turn it off, I will definitely be toggling that off first thing because I think depth of field just looks awful in games. And I'd rather not have elements on my screen being unnecessarily blurry for the sake of realism when everything could just be super sharp. And those are some of the main talking points and new things that they showed off in this video. However, there were also just a bunch of little tidbits of information here, whether that's just screens in the background for some B-roll footage, or these screenshots that they've shared of some of the gunsmith and some of the weapons we're going to be seeing in the game. So here we have an assault rifle, which is called the Axion in-game. This is based on the H&K 437, so it is chambered in 300 blackout. And you can see there's the Apex attachment on the bottom. That's that free attachment that's kind of a gimmick that they add to each of the weapons. And then we can also see just kind of the standard gunsmith layout that we're used to. Then on the bottom left, you can see it does show us our fire rates, and then we've got our stat bars there. Once again, we're not seeing any advanced stats option here. And I'm really hoping we will be seeing an advanced stats screen, and this is just in development, so it's just not in there yet. You can also see that you can directly access the firing range there, and on the bottom right, you can see the gunny system, which is that AI gun builder that you can use that will factor in the playstyle that you want, as well as the attachments that you have unlocked and available. Now, after that, they did show off the Apex attachment for the Axion, and this is a receiver conversion that reconfigures it into a compact, high-mobility variant with an integrated saw stock and side grip for aggressive maneuvering. So basically the chainsaw mod, which is very interesting to see on this gun in particular and not an LMG. Then after that, they showed off some more of these Apex attachments. Next, we saw one on the M4, and with this one, it rechambers it into 5.7x28, so it looks very reminiscent of the FSS Hurricane from Modern Warfare 2. Then after that, we have the Cronin Squall Battle Rifle, and its Apex attachment that equips this with an underbarrel guided missile launcher. And we actually saw a little bit of gameplay with this. So you shoot it and then you laser guide it onto target. So wherever your laser is pointed after firing, it is going to move in the direction of that laser, which sounds pretty wild and out there. Then we've got the Mosin Nagant, and with this one, it has an integrated bayonet launcher. So not only is it a bayonet, but you can also launch the bayonet for a silent recoverable shot. Then we have the Oris 8.6 Marksman Rifle, and with this, we've seen its throwing knives that are attached to the side of the gun, and we have seen a little bit of gameplay here as well. So it just allows you to quickly throw those throwing knives out. And therefore, this one doesn't directly affect the gun itself. It just gives you that added ability to throw those throwing knives. And then finally, we've got the PM63 SMG, or they're calling it the WZ55 Striga. And with this, its Apex attachment allows you to use these in akimbo, and we have seen a clip of this in the past as well. And so it looks like there's going to be a lot of interesting depth. I think many of these are just going to be weird gimmicks that you're probably not going to use all that often. And I am a little bit worried that some things might get a little too silly with all of these Apex attachments that we're going to be getting, because some of them are a little bit out there. But time will have to tell on how that all ends up playing out. Another thing you may have noticed while looking at all of these screenshots is the weapon levels. For many of these, we're looking at 50 to roughly 70 weapon levels before you reach the maximum level on them. And that seems like a lot. Now, obviously, that's just the number. It doesn't tell us how long it's going to take to reach that maximum level. Like, you could have a very high level, but blast through those levels very quickly. My big hope, though, is this isn't going to be a very brutal grind to get a weapon leveled all the way up to maximum level. I don't mind a little bit of a grind. I think it's good to have a bit of a grind. I just don't want to be spending like many game sessions with a single gun just to finally get it maxed out and see its full potential. Now, in addition to those images, we also got this little video clip here showing off the Castoff 762, and we also got a bit of a look at our assault rifle weapon selection screen here. And it does appear they are merging assault rifles with battle rifles, because I think I'm seeing the Cronin Squall there at the bottom, and yet it was listed in the previous images as a battle rifle, and I'm not seeing a battle rifle tab at the top. In either case, after that, we got a bit of a look at the pre-lobby screen, and this one's quite interesting because we have map voting on the bottom left, and there are 3 maps that we can vote for. So instead of voting for one map or the other, and then you have a random option, it just gives you 3 maps to vote for. And these maps are Munition, Lotus, and Mumbai. And we've actually taken a deep look at some of these maps. I will leave a link to that video down below as well, because we've got some solid flyovers, and I was actually able to create rough layouts for many of these maps as well. But overall, I'm really liking the aesthetic of this particular menu. Another thing we got a brief clip of here is a death screen. And we can once again see that it not only shows you how many times the enemy hit you and how much damage they dealt, it also shows where in the body they shot you. And that really has me wondering if they're going to be having different body multipliers. Otherwise, why would it matter if you're seeing whether they hit you in the chest or the leg, for instance? So that definitely raises some questions there. And then finally, the last thing I wanted to mention here is in this little clip, we can see the name of 3 of the perks that are going to be in the game. We have Resupply as a tier 1 perk, Hardline as a tier 2 perk, and then a new perk called Blood Rush on the bottom. So that's pretty interesting. And you can also see a little bit of the heads-up display and what that's going to look like. A lot of it is quite familiar, but I am quite liking the looks of things on the bottom right. And there we go. That is going to wrap it up for today's video. Overall, I think a lot of this is looking very promising. A few things I'm still a little bit concerned about. I feel like I just want to get my hands on the game to really see how it all plays out for myself, because there are still some questions that are up in the air. But this is where I'm curious to hear from you guys in those comments down below. How are you feeling about all of this new information and these gameplay clips that we got yesterday with this behind the scenes video? Are you guys generally liking how things appear to be shaping up, or perhaps not? Are there certain elements that you're not a fan of? And if so, please let me know what it is that you're not liking about this so far. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.